Hey, this is Synergy Loves Company, where we explore how Disney connects to everything. I'm Eric, and thank you so much for tuning in to listen. On Synergy Loves Company, we usually talk about Disney and something else, the Super Bowl, Taylor Swift, George Lucas. You know how Disney connects to everything. But today we're going to do something different because I'm about to go to Disneyland for the first time ever, and I'm super excited. And if you're anything like me, when you have a parks trip planned, you hit those Disney podcasts, those Disney influencers, those people on YouTube, on Instagram, and they help you stay on the pulse of what's happening and they help you get hyped for your trip. So I know you listen to Disney podcasts. You're listening to one now. And one of the things I did to get ready for my trip is I've been listening to the Moustalgia Fast Pass to get my Disneyland updates and to let me know what to expect. So I am thrilled to tell you today that keeping me company is the host of Moustalgia Fast Pass and the leader of the Happiest Club on Earth, Kristen Carr. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. I was so honored.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming here and
Of
helping me
course.
sort out some of my Disneyland questions.
Of
So,
course.
before we even get into Disneyland, could you tell me a little bit about the Happiest Club on Earth and Moustalgia Fast Pass?
Sure. I guess I would start with the Happiest Club on Earth. I have had an Instagram since the beginning of Instagram. I just didn't, back when it was actually pictures and you were taking like arty
Yes.
pictures, everyone was obsessed with like taking the coolest looking photograph. Um, but as a Disney local and like a lifelong Disney fan, a lot of my Instagram was Disney. This was pre-kids. I was in the middle of trying to convert my husband into a Disney fan, which is now done and over. He's successfully converted.
Nice.
And then we had kids, and then it became a lot about taking the kids to to Disneyland on Instagram. And I wasn't really sharing too much, but then I was starting to get a lot of questions, like, I didn't know you could take the kids that young, or I didn't know you could go on these rides, or whatever it was. And that was kind of the birth of like people doing influencing at Disney. I feel like there was maybe like 3 or 4 people that were doing it at that time, and I definitely did not consider myself one of those people. I just kind of posted about things. I also have done events for like 20 years. So it naturally progressed into, hey, like, could you throw some events for us? Or, hey, I'm doing a Disney party. Do you think you could help? My so-and-so's friend is having a Disney wedding, can you help with that? So it kind of became like this thing where I was starting to do events. And then particularly during COVID, actually, ironically enough, when nobody could do events, I was getting so many people asking, like, can you please, like, as soon as we're done with this, can you please start doing events again? And can you just do fan events? Like, can you just do events where we get together? And I kind of was doing that a little bit before COVID. I was doing like meetups in the park sometimes. I would do like days that we would all go to a movie when it was coming out or something very casual, nothing really too serious. I was doing events still. I was doing some major fundraising and I was doing some things for the studios. So I was still doing events, but nothing like specifically huge for Disney. But during COVID, everyone was just so hungry and desperate to get together and to like have something to look forward to, I think. So fresh out of COVID, I hosted my first screening and I got an advanced screening given to me through ScreenX actually. And ScreenX is like that 270-degree theater. And we did a huge screening with ScreenX and it was terrifying because
Yeah.
no one was doing events at the time. So I really
Right.
did wait until the theaters were fully open and you could go as long as you were wearing a mask and I forgot what all the rules were at the time.
Right.
But I made sure that it was at that point. And sure enough, they were releasing Black Widow and they gave me an advanced screening. And I kind of just threw up a Google form. And I thought, well, if we get like 20 people to go, it's 20 people, right? And it is what
Yeah.
it is. And I think I had like 120. And
Oh, man.
the theater held like 200. But I mean, during like coming out of COVID, that was shocking because I just thought, oh my gosh, people are so scared. And like, it was scary to me too. Cause I just thought, oh my gosh, if someone gets sick from
Yeah.
this and it comes back on me, this is going to be terrible. Like I'll never do an event again because everyone was so quick to just jump on people during that time. And everyone was just so thankful and happy to be together and to be like talking about something exciting and seeing something for the first time together and experiencing something Disney. I mean, it was Marvel, but it was Disney, right? And
Right.
everyone was so happy. And it just started this like snowball effect. And then it was like anytime anything was happening, people were like DMing or emailing me, are you doing an event for this? So I kind of started like taking things from the community. Meanwhile, during COVID, I stumbled upon the Moustalgia Fast Pass, or no, Moustalgia, right?
Yes.
Our parent podcast, Moustalgia. Stumbled upon them, started binging them during COVID. Actually, I started binging them before COVID, and I knew Kristen and Jeff, and
Okay.
I wasn't like as crazy onto it, but then COVID happened, right? And so then you're like,
Hmm.
you're home and you're just like listening to everything. And
Yes.
I was listening to Moustalgia like crazy. I think I had been a guest a couple of times where like they would say, they would ask me, hey, if you go to this after dark, or I think I went to 80s night, and they said, could you report on it? Like next week, if we have you on, can you come on for like 10 or 15 minutes and kind of tell us a little bit about it? I did that. During COVID, they were still doing stuff. So I would go on as a guest sometimes and talk about things, especially when Downtown Disney opened and you could kind of walk around Downtown Disney, and then that whole progression coming out of the pandemic. As we came out of the pandemic and the parks were talking about opening again, Jeff and Kristen said, we really need a news portion, because we really are more about the history of Disney and kind of connecting those things and having guests. We really need the news again, because we get people asking us all the time, we're listening on our way down. Can you tell us what's happening in the parks this week or next week? And they're like, you're so good at like telling us those kinds of things, when you come on, but you're only on for like 10 minutes or so. So we really need something more like that. I was like, okay. And they're like, can you think of anyone to do that with? So I had my brother, who is like the biggest Star Wars Marvel nerd ever, which is
Yes.
paying off for him now as an adult. And then I'm thinking to myself, right, like we're opening an Avengers campus and we're getting all these things. So the first person I thought of was my brother. And I thought, how fun would that be? Like we have passes, we take our kids together. And I just thought, oh my gosh, my brother and I would have so much fun. And we banter a lot. And,
Yeah.
it's friendly mostly. And, at the end of the day, he's my little brother, so I give him a hard time. But I think people kind of like hearing it. It's a little bit like a roast sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have my friend Sam, who's an amazing artist. He's super talented. Funny enough, my husband and I went to Walt Disney World during the pandemic because Walt Disney World was open.
Right.
And he happened to be in Walt Disney World because he was doing a art signing. It was during
Oh, nice.
Festival of Arts. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we actually met for the first time at Epcot when he was
Oh,
signing.
cool.
And so Sam and I talked a little bit, and I said, hey, you know what? Like Moustalgia mentioned doing a news podcast. Would you want to do it with me? Because I'm thinking about doing it with my brother, and then it could be like 3 of us. And then that way, we all have a ton of kids. And that way, if you can't make it, it's no pressure. And if my brother can't make it, it's no pressure. Like
Right.
we kind of could have like rotating, and like if all 3 of us can make it, awesome. And if only 2 of us can make it, then we're good. And he was like, yeah, I would totally entertain that. So we kind of just jumped in, and our first episode was in preparation of Avengers Campus opening. So that was our first episode. And we
Nice.
reported on that and like the previews that we saw and Magic Key News and all the updates. And like 131 episodes later, we're still going. So yeah,
Nice.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's going. I mean, we have kind of developed this style with each other, and it's not for everybody. I mean, not every podcast is for everybody, but my brother insisted when we started that he start with a dad joke. I already know what you're going to laugh about.
I do love these because I do listen to the show, like I said, getting ready for my trip, and I do love these, and they have been they've
I'm
been
not going to
missing
let
the
him hear
last
that
couple
part. I'm
episodes.
not going to let him hear that part. It goes
Should
to
I
his
cut
head.
that?
No, because he starts to think like, oh, they're funny. Like everybody, they're not funny. They're meant to be stupid. Like they're meant to be dumb. They're dad jokes. But he
Right.
like wants them to be funny. Like he thinks he's funny. I'm like, you're not funny. These are just dumb jokes. But sometimes they are funny, right? And like, but
Yeah.
Sam and I like to just have people audibly hear us rolling our eyes because it's just more fun that way. So I like to roast my brother. So every time he has a dad joke, I'm very like, oh, but I have leaned into it a little more because I have heard as you just said, from many
Right.
listeners how much they love the dad jokes. And when my brother's not on an episode, I can't even tell you the amount of messages we get that are like, no dad joke this week. I'm like, oh my gosh. So then Sam and I would try to deliver the jokes, and Sam's like, we just can't do this. He's like, because we're not good at this. I'm like, who would think you would have to be good at delivering a dad joke? Like they're crap. Like what?
Yeah.
But yeah, so my the Happiest Club on Earth is my handle for Instagram, but it's also my website and it's also my company. Like I do everything under that umbrella. So I do events through there. Sometimes I sell merch. Everything on my Instagram is that. Like if I do a PDF guide or if I sell some sort of thing, it's all through my website. And then I do freelance journalism. So I'll take pieces. I'll pitch certain things to editors, and I'll do pieces on the parks or Disney. I used to love to do Disney history pieces. They require a lot of work and a lot of time and research, and I do love them, but I take them on very sparingly now because it is
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so time consuming. And with 4 kids and everything else that I have going on, it's not, a focus of mine as much anymore, but I do love them. And I started doing that because an editor reached out to me because during the pandemic, I wrote a blog article that I researched for a couple of months to kind of keep my brain from going insane during COVID.
Yeah.
And it was a driving through Walt's Los Angeles tour. And it was basically a tour of all the important places from the second Walt stepped foot in Los Angeles until basically Disneyland. And I wrote this blog, and it was just like all the places, and I put like the address, how you could get to it, how you could get like the exact profile of like that picture. I posted some pictures of like Walt and Lillian in front of those exact spots, and just kind of like
Nice.
little blurbs of things. It did take me a really long time to research it. So I kind of fell into that part of it, which I love. Like that part's so fun for me.
Yeah.
So it's nice because all those things sort of are married and fit together really well. So I can
Oh,
do,
yeah.
Disney content, and I can do writing, and I can do podcasting, and I can do events, and they sort of all work really well together. It's a lot. It's a lot of juggling, but it's
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Well, and that's what makes you the perfect person for me to ask to help me plan the event of my Disneyland vacation
So
with all
much
that history
pressure
that I
though.
love. And
Yes.
but you're the one to do it. If
Okay.
anyone can, you're going to be the one to do it.
Okay.
So let's start. Let's get into my
I'm up
trip.
for the
I
challenge.
want
Let's do this.
I want to start from where I'm getting to Disneyland as a family of 4
Okay.
from the Midwest. You're like you said, you have local roots going back to being involved with Disneyland forever. It's basically home to you.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
do the tourists from the Midwest get in your way?
No. No.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure where that conception came from. Like people say that a lot, and I think it's a really common misconception. I I think that might be geared more towards a more entitled sort of Disney person. Like maybe someone who kind of goes through the parks and takes ownership in it more. Like I have
Gotcha.
I have a viewpoint that like Disney is for everybody. Like I want everyone to like get the magic that I get. Like I want everyone to soak up that magic. And I know there's a lot of people that have like ownership a little bit over it. And I think that's maybe where that comes from. Like when somebody's not a local and they stop in the middle of the walkway, it's annoying because you've stopped in the middle of the walkway. Like, I mean, people stop when they walk. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like I understand it. And if I had an agenda, like, and if I was really like, I don't know, if I was pressed for time or something, maybe, but I feel like that could be the same thing at the mall. I mean, it's not that
True.
different. No, you don't get in my way
So
at all.
okay.
No, I tend to be the person really annoyingly in my family and in my friends sometimes that will literally stop and like if I see a family like you with a map open, I'm like usually the person that's like, "Can I help you find something? Like, are you looking for something?" Because I'm like, I could
Nice.
probably find it for you in 2 seconds or tell you in 2 seconds, and it's going to take you like 20 minutes to figure out where you are, where
Yeah.
you're going. So, yeah, I want everyone to enjoy it.
Nice. Well, that I'm glad that there are those Disney locals out there that have that outlook because I might be the guy with the map. I've been looking at my maps because I am kind of a map nerd. Um, but still, it's going to be different when I'm in this space, right?
Okay, have you been to Disney World?
I have been to
Okay.
Disney World quite a few times.
Okay. So, right off the bat, it'll be easier to navigate because it's smaller, so you won't have as
Yes.
much trouble. And if you go one way, you're not going to be like, oh, it's 3 miles to get back to the right way. I mean, so you have that going for you.
Right.
I think Sleeping Beauty Castle is perfect the way she is. You probably will think she's somewhat of a micro mini of a castle,
Right.
but I find her perfect. But someone coming from Disney World who's only seen that and then sees Sleeping Beauty Castle, I think the common thing out of your mouth is going to be, she's so small. Because she is. She's smaller. She's dainty. Yeah. I mean, I'm not Philander, if you know Philander Butler, he's a friend of mine, and he lectures me often and tells me that I am too much of a Disney purist and that I get very hung up on things staying the same. I do, and I'm thankful for friends like him that kind of pull me back and tell me like, hey, Walt would never be okay with things staying the same. And I'm like, okay, like,
True.
agreed. But I do get a little caught up on things like the nostalgia of it. Like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, like
Right.
I have so many family memories wrapped up in that. Like I have my grandparents and, taking my mom as a kid and then my mom taking me as a kid, and now me taking my kids. And when things change, although I get excited for it, I do get a little sad when things are not, nothing from it is going to remain, because I feel like that I lose a little bit of that, right? Like I lose a little bit of that memory. So when people talk about Sleeping Beauty Castle, I'm like, I mean, she's small, but like, I don't need her to change. Like, it's fine. But I'm sure people look at it and they're like, why would you not add something to that? Like, it's so little. But yeah, so I think right there, you'll be just fine. You'll be able to get along just fine. Um, Small World. I'm not a Small World
Okay.
fan, but I appreciate the tradition of it all. And it was actually my pop's favorite ride. And I
Nice.
honor him every year. And I go on it one time, and I go on the Christmas version because it was his favorite. And then I'm done. But that ride in Walt Disney World feels like a
What?
country fair, like a county fair amusement thing. I don't know. Where here, like at home, it feels like, it's a big thing. Like it's a big
Yeah.
ordeal. And when you go to it in Disney World, it just feels like kind of like an afterthought, like a little building of a county fair. So I think that's like a major difference probably that you'll have.
Nice.
I imagine.
It's funny that you bring that up because we were talking about it not too long ago. My daughter, she was kind of like, I don't need to ride Small World in Disneyland. And I was
I'm
like,
with
but
her.
it's not the same as what you know in Walt Disney World. Um,
Yeah. What's your daughter's name?
Maddie,
Maddie. You can skip it. It's okay.
for real. So I might have to edit some of this out or stop you
I
because
mean, take a
I'm
picture in
just
front,
joking.
go to the exit, stand up on
Right.
top of the
I
bridge at
hear
the
you.
exit and admire it because it is gorgeous. Go,
It's true.
go on the Grand Circle tour because the train drives right through the front of Small World.
Oh, right.
Call it a day. It is different, but it's not so different that if you went on it, like for me, going on the Walt Disney World one, the major difference is outside, like the actual queue and loading on the boats. Like that's the biggest
Yeah.
difference. And then you get on, you're like, okay, this is pretty much the same thing. Like there's a
On
couple
the
things that are
inside.
different, but like I couldn't pinpoint those things like right off the bat to you. Like, I mean, it was a little
Gotcha.
shorter, maybe like the one in Disneyland's a little longer, but there's nothing like remarkable about the differences. The outside really, I mean, the actual building structure and like Mary Blair's art in Disneyland,
Yeah.
I feel like is really more this is more the focal point than anywhere else. So Maddie, just stand on the bridge and take pictures, and your dad in the boat and just wave.
There you go. No. Well, let's get into that a little bit more, because there are some of those kind of attractions that are at both parks,
Yes.
or at both resorts, really, because we've got the 2 parks at Disneyland and the 4 at Walt Disney World. But what are your recommendations for like a must-do Disneyland attraction? If it's not Small World, what are maybe my, a few must-dos that I have to do at Disneyland and DCA?
I mean, you have to do Space Mountain.
Okay.
Um, our Space Mountain is superior.
No,
There,
I've heard that, but how?
the ride itself is superior. The queue and the theming are better in Disney World. I will give Disney World that. Magic Kingdoms is better, but our ride is better. Like the turns are better. It's darker.
Oh,
You can
okay.
see less. Yeah, I just prefer our actual ride track. Um, I love. I'm. I mean, I would have never thought this growing up. I would cringe at this as a 12-year-old that couldn't stand watching my brother's Star Wars movies. I love Batu and I love Rise of the Resistance. That is a must no matter who you are. I feel like you absolutely have to do that. Um, Cars Land in DCA at
Cars Land,
sunset
yes.
cannot be beat. Like, go
Sunset.
look up on your phone what time sunset is and make sure that you're on Route 66, because they do the whole shaboom, the lights flicker and they do
Yeah,
that whole thing. And it's a whole sight to see. Like, people get into it and like the cast members do little like dance lines throughout, and all the lights light up and you can see it all kind of like light up down, as you go. It
that's
like
awesome.
lights and then everything lights up down at the end of Route 66. That's a must. Guardians, must. My number one attraction here. It's my favorite
Yeah,
thing. My favorite, ironically enough, is Guardians in Epcot. So
okay.
both close. Guardians have my heart. But Guardians for sure, because of just the way that ride mechanism is. I mean, I don't feel like you can get that anywhere else. It's unreal. Um, I mean, if you're coming all the way to Disneyland, you kind of have to do Matterhorn.
Yeah.
You're not going to enjoy it. I'm just going to put that out there. It's not meant to be enjoyed. It's just meant to be, like when you go to your grandma's and you don't really want to go listen to all her stories, but you do it because, she's old and those stories are important. So, it's part of the job. Like, you go to Disneyland, it's part of the job. You got to go on there and you got to, appreciate what the Imagineers did and how hard Bob Gurr worked. And, you have to do it. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be comfortable. I don't know what to tell
Now,
you.
I have this like because I'm such a Disney like history, all of it fan. You mentioned Bob Gurr. Bob Gurr sometimes has popped up
I love
more often than not on this show sometimes. But for real, like I'm like I want to ride them. I'm like the only one who really wants to ride the Matterhorn out of my
So
family.
if you're gonna do it, I prefer it
Yeah.
at night because
Okay.
I find it fun at night because I have this I'm not afraid of anything. Like, I love all rides. I'm open to everything. Like, nothing freaks me out. I don't get motion sickness. Like, you want to ride Guardians 12 times? Like, let's do it. I'm in. Like, I don't care.
Gotcha.
But I have a very irrational fear of the Yeti. I don't know why.
Okay.
Like, I'm a grown woman. I'm not sure what my problem is. I literally believe, like, every time I can't even tell you the amount of times I rode the Matterhorn. Hundreds. I literally believe in my heart that he is gonna grab me every single time, and I like. It's just like it's like seeing a scary movie. Like, it's so fun because like the thrill and like the adrenaline. I will ride Matterhorn just for that, and I will take the beating all the other places
Nice.
of the ride. But I love like the hairpin turns when the Yeti's like around that corner. Like, that's fun.
Nice. So see, I'm excited for it, and I everyone says it's
Bring
I'm gonna hurt my
ibuprofen.
back, my
Yeah, bring
legs.
some
It's
ibuprofen.
all
You could bring like some hot
okay.
packs. Yeah,
There
you'll
we
be good.
go. Yeah, we just like prepare for. Actually, too. Now
Yeah.
that you say that, the end of the night's not a bad idea. Like later in the
I
evening,
like
because
the end of the
then
night. You know why? Because you probably went to
yeah,
DCA and had a drink or two, and you're a little loose.
right.
You get
And then
on there, and you're probably not as stiff holding on. Like, you can kind of just
yeah,
like bounce around a little bit. I mean, it's a little better.
I like
So
that
not so
idea.
harsh. I keep forgetting you don't have to go to
Yeah.
DCA to drink anymore. Technically, you could just be in Disneyland now.
Yeah, certain spots still though, right?
Yes.
Certain spots.
Well, so ever since Batu opened in Disneyland, you could drink in Ogas, but you can't take it out of
Right.
Ogas. So you drink in Ogas, have your two
Yeah.
drinks, move on. Now you can drink Riverbarrel Terrace, Cafe Orleans. You can always drink at the club, but I don't know if that's in
Well,
the cards for you.
no.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Um, you can drink at the club. You can drink at Cafe Orleans. You can drink at Blue Bayou Restaurant now. Any kind of almost any sit down restaurant for the most part. Carnation has an amazing margarita. I'm a margarita snob, and I will tell you that I was really very happy about the margarita that they offered at
We
Carnation.
do have a reservation at Carnation
Okay,
already. I do know we
so
do have
you
the
need
one
the
there.
margarita. Yes, you need that
All
margarita.
right.
It's a very generous margarita.
Awesome. So then after that
Then go to
reservation
Matterhort.
and then we
Yeah.
go to Matterhorn.
Yeah.
Got
See,
it. So
you'll be
that's
fine. You're gonna be like, what
itinerary
are you
right
talking
here.
about? It didn't hurt my back at all.
Exactly. You start with that margarita at Carnation, then we're
Yeah.
good.
There you go.
Which we started already kind of talking about it because I also wanted to ask you about Disneyland snacks. Are there the iconic snacks? What do I need to try that maybe aren't the same as Walt
Mhm.
Disney World's iconic snacks? What are
Also,
those
like the same
Disneyland
things you
things?
always see, right? Like, I feel like you always see like the Mickey ice cream bar. Like, by the
Yeah,
way, nobody who has a pass or that's local is buying that ice cream bar. We're just not.
I can
Nobody
get
wants that ice cream bar.
I can get them at the grocery store now too. They have
Yeah.
the little ones in the
Oh
box
yeah, they
too. So
still.
yeah,
Let's see. I This is gonna sound blasphemous, but I don't think churros are great at Disney.
even the
Like
fancy flavors.
I love the fluffer nutter churro that they
Okay,
used to offer at Willie's churro cart over in DCA, but they only offer it like during a certain time of year, and
okay,
it's literally the only time you're gonna probably see me eat a churro because it's the only one I like. It's like hot melted peanut butter, dark chocolate, and then it has like chocolate chips or something. Like it's pretty much the only time you're gonna see me eat a churro. Um, I love the cream cheese pretzels over the regular pretzels. I feel like the
oh,
regular pretzels are hard. They're never quite like as good as you want them to be. So I love those. They don't have us in Disney World. I love this in our park. It's called the cream cheese orb and it's in front of Guardians Mission Breakout. I never see anyone at this cart. I'm always like the girl that runs up to get it because it's so good. It's this like pastry orb with like a purple. It's not ube, but it's very much like an ube color. I don't think it's ube. No, this was like pre-ube. This was like when Avengers
okay,
Campus opened. But it's like a cold cream cheese, like fluffy filling, almost like a cream filling, and the outside is kind of bready, and then it's rolled in like this black charcoaly sort of like crumbles. It looks
okay.
very Guardians. It's very cool, but it's like one of my
Nice.
favorite snacks. I love it, and it's like pretty hefty.
Yeah.
There's never a line. I love it. Let's see, what's the other one? I'm obsessed with the garlic cheese twist.
I've seen that one, and
Yeah,
that's definitely on the
that's
list.
day one, and I've had it many times, thinking like maybe I just had a good one. They're all good. Turns out you can't get a bad one.
To just buy multiple. No.
Yeah, just we buy two at a time
Yeah.
usually. Yeah, because we know that everyone's going to be happy. They only sell them in two places though, so you can only get them behind, like to the left of the castle at Maurice's Treats, or you can get them behind Matterhorn. Ironically enough,
There you
um,
go.
but yeah, they're nice and hot and gooey, and like they untwist, and the pretzel is really soft. The other thing I love, and I think it's the best deal in the park, and I will tell you why. If you go to Oga's, fun fact, you don't have to get alcohol or anything. You can get whatever you want when you go to Oga's. They serve something called a five blossom bread. It is actually
Okay.
pretzel, like fresh pretzel
Oh,
twists. And you get two on a plate, and you get like a whipped, spicy, like horseradishy dip for it, like a hot cheese dip. They are like sprinkled with black sesame seeds. It's $6.99, and it is
oh
my
wow.
favorite treat. It's so good, and they're hot and warm. And there's two big ones like on a plate, and it's my favorite thing at Oga's.
Thinking about Walt Disney World, I can't remember anything that's $6.99.
Yeah,
And
it's rare
also
here too.
Oga's in Walt Disney World doesn't have all that food.
So we have what they call concoctions. It's just snacks, but
Yeah.
some of them are quite good. And sometimes, so I'm not sure when you're coming, but during Season of the Force, which is for about a month before May the 4th, they will
Okay.
do special snacks at Oga's. That'll
Mm.
sometimes they're good, sometimes they're kind of funky, but the Five Blossom bread, which is pretzel, basically fresh, like baked pretzel, that was part of a Season of the Force like seasonal item, and it was so popular they left it on the menu. So I love that
Nice.
one. Let's see what else. All the cream cheese pretzels, I'm always down.
Cream
They always
cheese
have really good
pretzels.
flavors. They have like a toffee nut one sometimes. Um, they recently did like a Cinnabon one. I think it tasted like a Cinnabon at the mall, but it was like a cream cheese
Nice.
pretzel. Um, kind of it. Oh, the Monte Cristo waffle bites.
Oh, the
Those are good.
waffle one. Yeah.
So in the morning, they're only till 10 a.m. Those are very good. Those are only at Royal Street Veranda, so you're only going to be able to mobile order those. But those are like they're just like waffles with the Monte Cristo ingredients like baked into the waffle. So they're really good to
Nice.
like eat and walk. So in the morning, I
Oh,
think they're
good.
really. You can get like a half order or a large order. Just get the large order.
Yeah.
Speaking of half or large, the fresh baked cookies at Harbor Galley.
I've started hearing about those. Are they
Yeah,
now? I hear they sell out fast. Is that
they
true?
do. So you can get 6 or you can get a baker's dozen. Just get the baker's dozen.
Okay.
I absolutely love them. I'm obsessed with them. Every time I go, if they're on the mobile order, I don't even care if I have nobody with me. I buy a box and it's done. I put it in the backpack. I eat 3 or 4. I bring them home to my family.
Yeah.
I have friends that I went bananas over this. I made a reel. Like I went crazy about how good these were. And I have a friend that tried them and it was a male friend of mine who I respect, but he's wrong. And he told me, well, they're kind of just okay. Like if you have Toll House, you could like recreate the same thing. And I said, I'm going to guess that you don't actually make cookies at home and that your wife makes cookies and she bakes them. And when they come out of the oven, you eat them. Because he said, oh, Jen's cookies are just as good. I said, and so I asked him those questions. And he said, well, yeah, she makes great cookies. And when she makes them, I eat them. Like, that's why you don't care. Because I'm the one doing the baking. I'm the one
Mm.
making the cookies. I'm the one taking them out of the oven. And everyone
Yeah.
swarms and eats all the warm cookies. And I'm still there making the rest of the cookie batch and then cleaning the dishes. And then I'm eating the cookies. I didn't have to clean this. I didn't have to bake
Mm-hmm.
them. And I got them and they were hot and fresh and gooey and I can walk away. Like I paid for them. They're amazing. I walked away. So they taste better to me, but
Right.
they are very good. They
They
are
are
very good.
good.
And a good hack is if you get like a scoop of ice cream at Gibson Girl and you like watch Magic Happens and then you could like make little ice cream sandwiches.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, because the cookies at Gibson Girl are not good. So don't
So
get
you got
those.
to go around, gather
In the
ingredients,
hack.
and then,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
And
I
if
like
you
that.
get the ones from Harbor Galley, they can kind of sit in the box and they're still really gooey like
Yeah.
throughout the day. So if you were going to like watch Magic Happens, you could mobile order a scoop or 2 of your favorite ice cream and go sit, like get a little setup for Magic Happens and then put your little cookies and your ice cream together.
Nice.
It's good.
No, there's a lot of things I had to make note of and write down because some of that stuff I had heard about but didn't know if it was worth the hype, and some
The
of it I
Cosmic
hadn't
Orb,
even
yeah,
heard
I think
about.
nobody talks about that. It's always the treat that
Yeah.
I feel like nobody talks about. The other thing is like for food, there's a food truck in Hollywoodland that it has started to become known for its burritos and
Yeah.
it changes them out fairly quickly. So I'd say every like month or so you get a new burrito, but they pretty much are solid with their burritos. So whatever that burrito is, if it sounds relatively good to you, it's probably going to be decent. Like they had a chili
Nice.
relleno burrito at one point that I think we got like, I mean, I don't want to admit this, but probably 5 or 6 times because we were like,
Not at the same time though. It
I
was
mean,
across. Yeah. So you could admit
I
that.
could
That's
do it.
okay.
I
No.
shouldn't. I could. But I would say no. Like my husband and I were like almost every time we went, we were like, we're getting that chili burrito
Yeah, if
because
it's good.
their burritos are pretty legit.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
not to make this whole episode about food, but I'm going to still talk about food because DCA has its food and wine festival
It
going on,
does.
and we're going to be there during it. Now, we're big fans of the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. We've gone, but I kind of want to know what to expect because we do love Epcot's Food and Wine. We're going during DCA's. How do those two compare? What's the
So I love and admire Epcot's food festivals. I wish we were that caliber. We are not. We're good, um, but I don't think we're as adventurous or as we miss the mark a lot. And I don't know if that's because we're newer to it, maybe. Um, but Epcot just they have the formula down. We go during the food festivals all the time, and I feel like I'm rarely disappointed. Like there's some really really good options. I think also you get into the same conversation, right? Of like size. Disneyland's so much smaller than Epcot. Obviously, DCA is nowhere close to the size of Epcot. Um, Also some of the theming, right? Like Epcot really relies heavily on the countries. So they take like
right?
Germany and then they take greatest flavors in Germany and they come up with something really cool for that cart. So it's a little different in that way. DCA's food festivals have some really good items. Like I am a stan for the chile relleno empanada. Hands
Okay,
down, my favorite snack during the Food and Wine Festival. We have some pretty solid mac and cheeses. I would say like the
nice.
carbonara mac and cheese is really good. I think there's a barbecue pulled pork that's fairly
Oh,
good.
nice.
Um, our stuff tends to be a little on the heavier side. Like it feels kind of like the America Pavilion in Epcot. Trying to think what else. We tried to do your cheeseburger bao bun that was in Epcot or Disney World. We
Yeah,
just it's sad.
didn't work.
We missed the mark.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing wrong, but it's not the same. Let's see. There's some cool like meatless options. Like if you don't eat meat, there's some decent options here. I feel like that's more of a California thing probably. So there's
Yeah.
some interesting options for that. There was a Baja fish taco that's not fish, but
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
my husband and I ate it, and I told him afterwards that it wasn't fish, and he was like, "Oh," like I think it
Okay.
really like it faked him out pretty good. So that was a good option if you're looking for that. Um, the drinks are usually pretty good, so there's that going for them. They always have a couple weird ones. Like there's always a couple pretty strange. Like last year, I think we had an elote popsicle, which was just it was weird. I love
Okay.
elote. That was a little strange.
Yeah,
This
as a
year,
popsicle, I don't know.
yeah, this year we have a frozen old fashioned, which is
Mm,
odd.
that sounds better than the elote one, though.
I mean, if I'm gonna have an old fashioned, I'm assuming there's alcohol, and this one doesn't have any alcohol. So
Oh,
I
well,
feel
that's
like,
weird too. Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. To be totally honest with you, I don't feel like there's anything that's like over the top. Like they did these like,
Okay.
I think they did like pizza cheese chicken wings or something, and I don't think they were anything great. I mean, I think there's a lot of other food options that you could get, like lamplight brunch, amazing. Carthay, al fresco dining, great options. I don't think you necessarily would be missing a lot if you didn't do food and wine. I love food and wine because it gives us an option to have something a little bit different. But I don't know that there's anything necessarily that's like you have to have it. I mean, there's some sweets like the Snickers macaron is very good. It's very
Nice.
sweet, so you definitely have to share it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it. And like you said, that helps me check my expectations because, like I was saying, with Epcot, they got the big concerts, all the extra entertainment with
Yeah.
the food, and it's a whole experience. Or like even
Yes.
we were talking about Festival of Art earlier and how
Hmm.
that's such a big thing with the art.
Oh
But
yeah.
the
I wish we
DCA
had
ones
that.
are a
I
lot
wish we had that
smaller.
here.
No, it would be nice to bring because they have food and wine at DCA. What are there any other festivals throughout the
Yeah,
year?
so we just finished Lunar New Year. So we do a Lunar New Year festival,
Yes.
and that finishes, and then we have about, I think it's a pretty quick turnaround. We have like 2 or 3 weeks, and then Food and Wine starts. And then after Food and Wine, uh, what do we do? We do one in the fall. Can't think of what that one is for some reason right now. But yeah, we have about three a year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, they're ramping up a little more, and they're starting to add a few more carts and things. I mean, I think they're kind of finding their way with it, and it tends to be better. Like they tend to make some adjustments, and it's been good so far. Like we used to have these tear off tabs where you could buy like passes, and now they kind of do it all digital, which has been it seems to be a little faster. That's the other thing too, is like the pickup lines. It's just like Epcot. You know, when you go to pick up your food, it can take a really really long time.
Right.
Um, so on the weekends, food and wine, if you're a local, you tend to kind of avoid it because you know that it's going to
Oh,
be a little bit crazy. Yeah,
gotcha. All right. We talked a lot about food, which I'm
we
okay
did.
with because
But food
I
is
love to
super
eat.
important. Yeah,
Right. It is an important part of theme parks and the Disney
yeah.
parks especially.
Well, I'm
So
a
no, that
foodie, so
is
I feel like food is like my agenda
yeah.
everywhere we go. Yeah,
Well, yeah, you always got to eat, and if there's good stuff, you got to try it. So
sure.
no. But let's get back a little bit more to the parks because
Yeah,
um I do love to well, the show is about connecting things to Disney. This one's more about me connecting to Disneyland, this episode. But one of the I do love just kind of like Walt Disney the man, as I like to say, Walt Disney the man, um, and in his impact on just different places and the
yeah.
movies and the theme parks. Where are those touches of Walt that maybe are a little off the beaten path inside the I mean, I guess it would mostly be Disneyland because DCA was a parking lot when he was around.
Well, okay. So the interesting thing about that is DCA 1.0 was very
Yes.
much detached from Walt, right? Like I didn't feel Walt in that park. There was no mention of Walt. There was no feeling of Walt anywhere. It was very much sort of its own park, and they were trying to do all these different things. When they reimagined DCA into what it is now, we have Buena Vista Street, which is essentially, you know, where Disney landed in LA. And it's really supposed to feel like the streets of Los Feliz and all these different apartments. And you kind of have these window dressings that are very, very similar to Main Street. And you have a lot of the Imagineers or people that have helped over the years with their mentions all along Buena Vista Street. And it's really supposed to be like when, you know, Walt came here and like when he landed in LA with his suitcases. That part I love about DCA.
Okay.
I love that Carthay pays a huge tribute, right? Because that's the building that Snow White was premiered in.
Right.
Carthay Circle, it's so beautiful. And they have these old timey, you know, you have the trolley, and you have some characters that are supposed to be kind of like throwback nostalgia to that period of time, which is really nice. You have older cars that drive by and they kind of have like singers and performers that have that feeling to it. Very old Hollywood. And you have a
Yeah.
Hyperion that feels very much, you know, like that old Hollywood feel. And Carthay, like, even if you don't have a reservation, walk in there and ask them to walk around a little bit because there is
Okay.
beautiful art and photographs everywhere. I mean, you just missed it, but they have the Oscars from Snow White on display before the
Oh.
Oscars every year. So every
Oh,
year
nice.
before the Oscar, I think every year, I'm assuming it's been going on for a while, a couple of years, but they put the Oscars on display. So if you know, they gave him seven little Oscars and then the Oscar for Snow White. So it's all the little seven dwarfs, but they have it on display and they have like a security guard that stands there full time, but
Oh,
you can
cool.
see that like in Carthay, um, beautiful pictures, beautiful history. I mean, they did a really, really good job trying to tie Walt in to DCA. And I think they did a really good job with that when they reimagined that. In Disney, there's just so many things. I mean, for me, Small World really like that nostalgia and knowing how much time and energy and you know the history of moving that from the World's Fair and kind of all of that stuff for Small World is really really amazing. Fantasyland, like if you walk through
Oh,
Fantasyland, like Walt's hand is everywhere there, right? Like that his kids on Dumbo and him standing on the carousel. Like there are so many parts to Fantasyland that you walk through and you really kind of feel transported. I mean, there's a lot of parts of Fantasyland that you feel like that. The Tiki Room. I
Oh,
feel like the
yes.
tiki room is very kind of rarely talked about when you talk about Walt, but I have a photograph. It's behind where we are right now, but I have a photograph of Walt in black and white when he's in the tiki room. When he's kind of like looking up at all the birds, and
Yeah.
I love that photograph, and I love the story. When you hear him talk about that with the Imagineers, and they had this idea to do a restaurant with tiki birds, and that's how it developed, right? From him talking about that and him saying, if you did that, all the birds would poop on the food. Like,
Right.
you can't do that. And then it developed into this big thing, right? Like, well, we're gonna have birds. It's gonna be like a menagerie, and they're gonna sing songs, and um, that's really neat. I love that part. All the little alcoves in Main Street are so fun. I feel like there's a little spot where you go behind Starbucks, and it's an alcove that goes back, and there's the lockers, and there's just so many things back there. And if you listen, you can hear there's like sounds from the dentist upstairs. And I forget which Imagineer that's dedicated to. One's for iWorks, for
Oh,
his
yeah.
whole family. But there's just so many things. I mean, you go into Lincoln Theater, and there's so many things in, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and you walk through there, and I don't feel like people talk about this a lot, but when you exit Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, there is this beautiful wall of dedicated photographs of Walt with these amazing, dignitaries and people that have visited Disneyland over the years. I mean, everything you could think of, from some of like the biggest celebrities of the world to like a photograph of Martin Luther King, and like why that's there. And there's a lot of history there. That I don't think people talk about very often. And I think that that's maybe part of that entire thing. But Walt's apartment, I tell people this all the time, but if the Waltz, I forget what they're calling it now. I think now it's called the Main Street Story Tour. They've kind of called it different things over the years, but it is absolutely worth whatever it is they're charging now. I think it's up to like 145 for the tour. It's couple hours long, but you get to go in Walt's apartment, and you get to see, like, they would have their grandkids over to spend the night, and
Right.
the phone that Walt would answer the phone, when there was a problem, and they would know he was there, and they would call him. There's just so many details. And I think there's a lot of things that people probably miss because they're just in like the rush, right? Of like getting to the attraction, getting to the next thing, getting food. But there's just so many things to see. There's so many things to soak up. The castle, lots of stuff like the family crest on the castle. That's so
Oh,
neat.
right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I don't know if we're
Nice. No. So it seems like I'll be able to find those touches,
for
all
sure.
and it's gonna be like some people look for hidden Mickeys, I'm gonna be looking for those touches of Walt,
I
and I
think
know
that's
it's gonna
smart.
yeah, it's gonna drive my family crazy because that's kind of what I do, and just a little background on the show is I constantly am the person who is like someone's on TV, and I'm like, they were in that Disney movie, or they did that show on ABC,
The 6 degrees
or
of
I
Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
right. So that's kind of where I go with it. So the other kind of question I want to ask you is, we're going to be in Disneyland for a few days, and then we're going
Okay.
to go and explore LA. And so you wrote that article, the one
Yes.
that you told me about at the beginning, and
Yeah.
I kind of want to know, are there some of your favorite parts around the Hollywood area that I should try to divert my family to as we're exploring LA to go see more of those Walt touches kind of outside the gates of Disneyland?
There's a lot of spots. I do think it's super easy to get to, and it's very simple, but I love going to the street where Kingswell Camera is, where the original studio was with Walt and his brother, and Uncle Roger's garage, right? Like that
Oh,
whole
yeah.
area, that all happens to be on one street, like
Oh,
a couple
nice.
blocks away. So if you go to that, it's really interesting because his uncle's house is one section, and actually someone purchased it and was remodeling it. So I don't know if they're remodeling it like as a throwback, because I do know that they were aware of whose house it was. So it was kind of a
Okay.
historical thing. So I'm not sure what they're doing. Um, but his uncle's house faced an apartment building. And when they moved out of the house, the uncle's house, or like the garage that they were using for the studio, which is now in Garden Grove, actually, they moved the actual shed that they were using. The apartment complex across the street is where Walt and his brother moved. So they moved across the street because Kingswell Camera was the original studio, and it was down the street. So they would just walk.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
that's where he hired Lillian. So I love that whole little street because I feel like it just has so much history. Like you could just walk
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, this is like the street. This is so fascinating. Um, Walt and his brother Roy's houses, they were twin houses. They look identical. Um,
Nice.
Two separate people just purchased them and they painted them different colors. So now they look a little, they
Oh
look a little different.
no.
They used to be painted identical, and they whoever was living in them must have known the story because they kept them identical. But people just purchased them; they just changed ownership, and one of them changed the color dramatically, so it does look different. But they are literally the same exact house, right next to each other, and they built those houses, which is so incredible that they would want to build two identical houses. The other house is owned by a director now, like the big Carolwood estate. Obviously, you
Yeah.
can't even really see it from the street, so that's not
Okay.
really worth going to. Um, the spot that was the original studio was torn down, and now it's a Gilson's grocery store. It does have a landmark, like on a light pole, but it's really poorly taken care of, and it's kind of depressing when you see
Oh,
it. So skip that.
yeah.
But if you go to like Hollywood Boulevard, if you're brave enough, there's
Yeah.
tons of stars. You can see Walt's star, you can
Right.
see all sorts, and they're all kind of in the same general area. And I always put like on my tour on the blog too, I always put like it's really fun because you could go to the theater, like the El Capitan Theater has the Ghirardelli ice cream shop next to it, and they have a big
Oh
Disney
yeah.
store. So that's kind of fun to
Oh,
go to. And you walk about 4 or 5 blocks, and it's the giant Funko store. So you can kind of go and see
oh,
like
cool.
Funko installations. That's kind of like a nice little spot to check out. My favorite, and this might sound kind of strange, but my favorite thing that actually kind of shocked me was the Forest Lawn Memorial that they have. It's where Walt's buried. It's where his daughter is. It's where Lillian is also. Diane Dizzy Miller's not there, but she has like a little dedication thing there. But Sharon Disney's there, and him and Lillian, and it's off the beaten path. I mean, you would never really. I explain where it is in the blog because it was really hard. That was the hardest part of my research because nobody wants to tell you where it is, and I totally understand it. And I really stressed in my blog, like, please be respectful. Like, these are people's loved ones, right? Like, they are so cherished and so loved, and it's kind of off to the side, and they have their own little garden area, like with a gate and everything, and a little statue, and they have it on the wall, and it's just I don't know why, but it was like very beautiful to be able to see that in person, and just that it was very simple, but that you could tell like it feels a little bit like Disneyland, like it has that feeling and kind of the landscaping of this little area. But also, I've been there multiple times and I've kind of been blown away by the things people have left. So obviously, I'm not the only person that knows. Lots of people know. And
Yeah.
there's little trinkets always, every time I go. There's really meaningful things, sometimes little coins, and I never touch anything, but it's fascinating to look because it's so interesting to see like how much this person touched some people's lives, even 100
Yeah.
years later. Griffith Park, because that's obviously, one of the conversations that Walt always talks about, watching his girls on the carousel there. And that carousel's still
Right.
there. Yeah, and
Nice.
you can kind of go and see it. It's really interesting. It's a very, very old carousel, but it is still there. The bench is not there anymore. It's actually at Disneyland. But it
They
is
moved
interesting.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're
Nice.
here on a weekend, I know once a month on a Sunday, the Carolwood Barn Association, it's a nonprofit. They're in Griffith Park, and they actually have Walt's barn. So they transported the entire barn from the Carolwood estate, and they have like book signings and they do all sorts of cool stuff there. So, and you can actually see like the little mini trains that he used to have on the
Oh,
property.
very
They have a
cool.
running, working one, and you can ride on it. And it's
Oh,
free.
nice.
You don't have to pay, and they have some really cool things to see on display, some really cool train cars, and it's interesting. So yeah, if you're looking for something else to do, I'd say that's a really good place
Yeah.
to do.
No, you gave me a lot of good things, and some that I definitely like. I was somewhat aware of some of them, and then some I hadn't even considered. So that no, I'm excited for that list of things. And that's one of those things where like I am often told that I can't make the whole trip about Disney, but I'm sure gonna try. No.
I mean, There's some restaurants you could go to, like the Tam O'Shanter. Like, you know,
Right.
who doesn't want to go
Oh,
there? You don't have to tell anybody that's for him. You could just be like, I heard
yeah.
there's this really cool Hollywood restaurant to go to.
They'll figure it out when we get in
That's
there, and
good.
it's like, no.
You're like,
But yes,
oh,
no.
how interesting. There's a table here that the Imagineers used to sit at with Walt. Who
Would you
would
look at
have known?
that? They would be like, "You would have known. Why did you bring us here?" No.
It's good
But
food.
yes.
Just distract them with the food.
There you go. Well, yeah, no, I've got a lot of things now on my list, so I'm so glad we had this conversation. So much good stuff, so much cool things, so much good stuff to eat. I'm ready for
Yes.
the Matterhorn now, and I have all of those places around LA and Disneyland that I'm going to look for Walt. So thank you so much, Kristen, for joining me.
Happy to help. Yeah, of
So,
course.
could you tell us also where we can learn more about the Happiest Club on Earth and the podcast? Anything else you want to tell us
Yeah.
about that's coming up?
So the podcast comes out every Friday, and we call it Fast Pass Friday. And then you can find me on Instagram at the Happiest Club on Earth. And then you can also find me on my website, which is thehappiestclubonearth.com. And that's where I post both on Instagram and on my website everything that has to do with my events that are coming up. So I sell tickets on there, any merch that we're doing. Sometimes we do bundles for things. But I have a huge event coming up in April that if
Nice.
you're a Tiki Adventureland Society of Explorers and Adventurers fan, you will be very
Ooh.
excited. So it is a huge dinner. It's at Noble Ale Works, which is local to Disneyland. It has a very famous seltzer called Watch Me Whip, and it's like a melted Dole Whip in a can. It's very, very good. We're doing a fully catered dinner. It's all themed, very Adventureland. You'll get little passports. We have a bird guy coming and huge photo installations, and an official Dole Whip company is coming to do Dole Whips. And so some of that money, some of the proceeds from that are going to go towards a Run Disney fundraising team. So that's really
Oh,
important to us.
nice.
We love to do that kind of stuff when we can at these events. But we had a Tiki takeover there with some artists. We had Jeff Granito, Tiki Tony, and Sam came, and they did some art conversation, and then they sold some art, and everybody got some art as part of that event.
Nice.
And it sold out very quickly, and I kind of just threw it together. So this was on the back of that, of people asking for
Oh,
more.
okay.
So we're kind of doing a bigger and better version of it. And we're going to have some really cool things. Like Jeff is, if you buy a ticket to the dinner, you will also, among tons of other things, you will get a custom made exclusive to this event highball glass that Jeff Granito's designing for us. It's going to be really, really
Oh,
fun.
really
And
cool.
Tony's making like a resin pin for everyone. There'll be prints that everybody gets. There's a huge raffle. So lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. So stay tuned for that. The tickets are going to probably go on sale at the end of the month. And they
Okay.
go on a pre-sale first. So if you subscribe to my Magic Mail list, which is totally free, you will be part of the club. And then if you're part of the club, you get in on all the pre-sale for events, which is usually a couple days before everybody else. And then I put everything else that's left over on like public sale, and then that's it. So it's exciting.
Nice. Well,
Yeah,
that sounds super cool.
I'm excited
And
for
now
it.
I
And
wish I was going later and I could go and join your event too, but we're not gonna be
oh,
there that late
next
in
time,
April.
next
Yes,
time
next time we're out there, we'll have to see if you got an event going.
for
So
sure.
definitely
I'd love to have you.
thanks again for joining me. It was a lot
Of
of fun.
course, of course.
I want to thank my guest again, Kristen Carr, for joining me. And you listening, you can find me on Instagram and Threads at Synergy Loves Company. And if you're enjoying Synergy Loves Company, there are a couple of ways you can support the show. If you feel like you're getting value from the show and you want to give some back, you could do that on Ko-fi. If you look in my show description or go to synergylovescompany.com, you'll find a link to my Ko-fi page where you can give back to the show and help it keep going. If you feel like you benefit, you can donate a couple of bucks, buy me a cup of coffee. Every little bit helps. Another way you can help the show is by sharing it with someone who loves Disney just as much as you do. Maybe they're about to go to Disneyland and they would benefit from these tips too. Just tell them to go to synergylovescompany.com. No matter how you decide to support the show, your support means the world to me. So thank you. That's all for today, and thanks for exploring Disney's connections with me. Until next time, keep discovering the magic in everything.